name is Zane Pritkovs. I'll be your host for today. And to start with, we'll first of all, let's go through the housekeeping rules. And let me just actually turn on my camera. I'll see if you can still see both screens. Hopefully you do. So yeah, welcome everyone. So now, okay, so cameras, yeah, let's see. Right, so the session housekeeping, so the video and sound check. I would like to confirm actually with you guys if you can see the video, yeah, and also the sound is coming through okay. In the upper right corner, you might have there's a chat bubble there. Yeah, just if you can confirm, yeah, Philip is confirming all good. Paul and Tabani confirming that, yep, it's all coming through. That's good to see. So excellent. So we can proceed then. So at any point in time when you have questions during the meetup, look, as soon as questions pop into your head, don't hesitate, just put it in a chat and we'll be monitoring the questions and we'll be asking them in the Q&A session applicable to this particular presentation. So during the presentations as well, for presenters, probably best idea to turn the video off just to maximize the screen for viewers, which I'll do shortly as well. And for attendees during the presentations, your video and sound, if you can disable it, please. And at the end of our official part, at 7:30, we will actually enable. We'll ask everyone to enable. You can enable your cameras, your videos, and we'll have an open floor discussion at 7:30 p.m. and moving forward. There'll be also group photo opportunity for this event as well. So this session will be fairly fast-paced. However, recording will be available and will be available on our YouTube channel, which you'll see the link to. All right. I might turn my camera off for better performance of my apps here. All right, so today's agenda. So we will have at 6:05 p.m. we'll have news Microsoft Ignite edition, and followed by Q&A presented by Roshan. Then at 6:30 p.m. we'll have a printing with Windows Virtual Desktop and also Q&A, and that's from Christoph. And then 7:15 we've got Ask Me Anything part. It's a continuous part, I suppose, with Q&A and moving into open floor discussion as well, handled by Philip. And 7:30 p.m. our official part ends. However, we can still hang around and continue our Q&A and open floor discussion as well. So official presentation part lasts 90 minutes, but we can, if somebody wants to stay back, we can do that. So, all right, so quick introductions here. So my name is Zane, and so I'm over 20 years in IT and cloud video advocate and enthusiast. Currently working as a technical MD at ezeep and Thinkprint Australia. I'm also the group organizer and host, and have a few LinkedIn communities there as well. My contact details are there. So just wanted to quickly, since we're going through introductions, actually, I would like to quickly check with you guys, because last time we were attracting fairly multinational crowd from different places. So could you guys perhaps put your name and the city where you're from in a chat box? Just would be great to see where everyone is coming from. So we've got all right, so Roshan is from Melbourne, I believe. And all right, we've got Philip from Sydney, Roger from Adelaide. Welcome, Roger, as well. Yes, welcome. All right. Okay, and Christoph, welcome to Christoph from Denver, USA. Marco from Milan, Italy, welcome. Roel, welcome from Sydney. Yeah, and Dwayne from Melbourne, welcome. Welcome, guys. We've got again a really multicultural and multinational crowd here, so that's really good to see that so many people actually joining us. To continue, we've got Andrew from Sydney as well, and we've got Paul from Sunshine Coast, Queensland. Selva from Singapore, welcome, Selva. Yes, and Johan from Belgium, welcome, Johan. I'm glad we could have a chat actually with you, Johan, last night on LinkedIn, and we sorted a few things out for your Belgium WVD user group. So welcome to our meeting today. All right, so let's carry on with our next slide. So history, we've got now 10 user groups worldwide and staggering numbers of Twitter followers and page views and Slack channel, over 700 there, as you can see the stats. So original founders of the community, of your WVD community, Neil McLaughlin. Neil actually joined us last meetup in September. That was good to see him here to pop in. We also have Stefan and Patrick, so they are original founders of the actual community. So yeah, that's pretty, and the community has been growing. So right now 10 groups, and the numbers are really staggering. So UK group is now leading. It's 294 members. So we've got Holland, Germany, Belgium, Denmark, Sweden, USA, Australia, New Zealand, this group, then Japan and Italy as well. So Italy is a fairly new group, but it's really coming strong with member numbers. It's 115 now, just in a matter of a week or two. So well done, guys, as well. All right, so what to expect from our meetups? So we'll meet once per month, and we'll present the latest WVD news and hot topics. Recordings will be on our YouTube channel, and hopefully physical events in Q1 2021. Right, so this community is for you guys. So if you would like to share something, if you have some knowledge, some tips on WVD or updates, we actually have got a few Microsoft employees joining us. So if you guys know timelines for the latest WVD features coming out, feel free to provide your update, even perhaps during the news part. That will be handled today by Roshan. So yeah, otherwise, for any future presentations, simply reach out and let us know. And our contact details are here as well. Well, you know where to reach us. So we better move to the actual official part. So Roshan, do we have you with us?
Is Roshan here?
Yes, Roshan. Yes, we can hear you well. Fantastic.
Wonderful.
So I'll pass on the rights over to you, and hopefully you can see that now.
Yes, I'm sharing my screen. If you can confirm that you're able to see the screen sharing clearly.
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, wonderful. Let me put to full screen. Okay, so Zane, thank you again for giving me the opportunity to collaborate with you in this month's Windows Virtual Desktop Community event. Welcome everyone. I saw people joining from Belgium, Singapore, a lot of locations from Australia. Welcome and thank you for taking out time and joining us in today's session. My name is Roshan. I'm based in Melbourne. I've been working on Azure for a little over 8 years now. I've been a Microsoft guy pretty much throughout my life. Started working on SharePoint in 2000. 2008 when it was in 2003, 2007. SharePoint was in 2003 and 2007. And then moved to SQL, then moved to BPOS, which is the first version of Office 365, worked on Office 365 for several years, and then started working on Azure when it was known as Windows Azure. So we had SQL and storage at that time. My work background, I've worked with Microsoft for about 4 to 5 years, worked with several Microsoft Gold partners, and currently working with a value-added distributor in Australia. I'm close to 2 years old to Australia now. I've worked in Middle East and I've also worked in India. So these are 3 geographical locations that I've worked. You can contact me on my email address. That's my Twitter handle and my LinkedIn profile. So any assistance that I can help you with on Azure, please do get in touch with me. I'll be more than happy to see how well I can help you out. So my part of today's session is to quickly run you through some of the announcements that happened during Ignite. Ignite was this time a virtual event, and Windows Virtual Desktop was probably one of the biggest sessions or one of the highly anticipated service announcements that we were looking for, and there were quite a lot of them made. First off, Windows Virtual Desktop has now integration with Intune or Endpoint Manager. You can now manage, onboard, and take care of your virtual desktops right from your endpoint console itself. So I've just taken a snapshot here. I've also come across an article written by another WVD community contributor who's now writing blog about how we can have this integrated in terms of step-by-step document. After the session, I'll put that links in the chat so everybody has access to it. So it's something that will definitely help deploy, manage, and optimize WVD for larger organizations much more easy and cost effective. So I definitely encourage everybody to look into it, try it, and now make it as part of the implementation for your customers. Msix App Attach has been probably one of the biggest features that I was excited about. This is currently doable, but you'll need to run scripts in order to do it. Microsoft product team is now bringing this as part of the portal or the ARM itself. So it'll be very, very easy to manage not just your desktops, but also your apps and user profiles. So now you can have your desktops updated without any impact to the apps, or you can better plan for management of the entire Windows Virtual Desktop. So you can have a strategy for user profile, a strategy for apps, and a strategy for the virtual desktops itself. So it definitely makes the management, the deployment much more easy, much more simpler. And definitely customizable as well. So you can update apps, release different versions of apps. You can have validation environment where you can test out beta apps as well. So it definitely makes life of both the end user and the implementer much more simple and easy. They have also announced about security enhancements. So the screen capture protection was again one of the highest voted feature request, and Microsoft has enabled that. So now you can disable print screen options on your virtual desktops. You also have direct RDP sessions. So now you can directly open up an RDP session to your session host. Earlier, you had to use the dirty trick of enabling your NSG group to open up the port and then having access it from your Active Directory if you're running it on virtual machines. So, but now this option is available for users to use, and it just makes it easier. They've also released a quick start. This is definitely helpful for any customer who wants to deploy Windows Virtual Desktop quickly and get a feel of how it works, what are the features, functionality, and even possibly use it in production for smaller environment. So it's a completely DevOps driven deployment. It's if you open up this link, you'll see details about how it works, what components are deployed, what happens in the back end when it actually deploys, what components of DevOps and pipelines and things that it use. The code is also made available, so you can customize it further. Start VM on Connect. This is again a very interesting feature that Microsoft announced. When it comes to auto scaling in Windows Virtual Desktop, if you know, currently we need to enable or have all the VMs ready, already created within Windows Virtual Desktop, and have them in the shutdown state. And whenever there is a new user request initiated, the virtual machine will need to start. So this is what Microsoft is now bringing to Windows Virtual Desktop. So as soon as it detects a user request, you can go ahead and start the virtual machine based on the user initiation, a user connection initiation. So that is something that Microsoft is bringing in. I think this will definitely be one of the game changer features into Windows Virtual Desktop. It's in private preview now. I know a few customers in Australia trying this feature, but we are still waiting for it to be made available for public preview. Also, Microsoft has now made a dedicated workbook for Azure Monitor, which gives more detailed information about Windows Virtual Desktop. This workbook was already created by Christian, one of the global black belt WVD experts from Microsoft. Now Microsoft has made it official and brought more telemetry information in a much more easy to understand format. So it definitely helps in troubleshooting. This is one of the go-to workbooks that I use whenever I deploy Windows Virtual Desktop and end up troubleshooting or finding out why there is performance issues or why there is connection issues with the Windows Virtual Desktop. This helps us narrow down where the issues. Is it network? Is it disk? Is it the compute? So it definitely helps us narrow down and see where the issue is and why is it happening. And it also gives a very nice trend analysis of the entire infrastructure. Some of the other news in the world of Windows Virtual Desktop, Azure Advisor now gives you recommendations for Windows Virtual Desktop. So Azure Advisor is a service within Microsoft that gives recommendation with respect to cost, performance, high availability, and security for pretty much most of the infrastructure as a service components. Now the same service also gives information with respect to Windows Virtual Desktop. So definitely a handy tool, especially when you want to take the first steps in cost optimization. When Azure Advisor is definitely something that a customer can see and make the right decisions. There's Azure CLI support now available for Windows Virtual Desktop. As you can see, it starts with easy desktop virtualization. It helps you pretty much everything that you do on the portal is now possible to be automated and scripted on the CLI. So again, a very interesting feature, especially if you want to get into automation and scripting of Windows Virtual Desktop. So definitely a very useful tool. Lastly, this is an update that came out last week. Windows Virtual Desktop is now generally available on Azure Government Cloud. I'm not 100% sure if this is available for Australian Central and Central too, but it's definitely available for Canada and US. So yeah, this was in public preview so far, and now it's made general available. So if you have customers or if you're a customer who is into government, one of the government councils or entities, you can now definitely deploy Windows Virtual Desktop into Azure Government. Again, a very interesting article was released a couple of weeks ago, and several videos have also come out. Dean Safola a couple of days ago also made a video on disaster recovery for Windows Virtual Desktop. So now you can create a proper disaster recovery plan for Windows Virtual Desktop. Microsoft has published the article, and I would say your Windows Virtual Desktop disaster recovery primarily would include disaster recovery with respect to user profile, which is your FS Logic containers, and possibly your personal desktops, personal host pools, right? For pooled, most of the customers are now moving to stateless VMs. I would say it's not really required to protect the pooled VDIs, but again, depending on the customer scenarios, you can plan for it. But now you can definitely look at how you can use ASR, which is the primary service behind it, for personal desktops, and even for FS Logic. Now it gives you an option to mention two locations where your office container and profile container are being stored. So definitely a very good feature for enterprise customers who have that compliance need, and also for customers who are looking for that DR setup for running even if they're running applications on Azure. So these are some of the updates on Windows Virtual Desktop that came out during Ignite. If you guys have not been following the WVD community site, I would strongly encourage you to follow them. They they send out newsletters which summarize every new feature that comes out with Windows Virtual Desktop. It keeps you updated about the new features and functionality. And every now and then, if you just browse through their website, you get tons and tons of information, both with respect to new video content, new interviews that they do. So desktops in the cloud is something that Microsoft is driving. Very good content, very nice speakers come onto that particular sessions, and you definitely get a lot of insight. And all this information is collated into WVD community site. So I'd strongly encourage you, if you have not been following them or you're not subscribed to them, please do subscribe, and you'll find all this information. So, well, just wanted to quickly run through those news and announcements. Anybody has any questions, feel free to you can post them on the Q&A, or you can, Zane, if you can, I don't know if they can unmute themselves and ask. But yeah.
Yes, of course. Yes, I think it's a community part. So, and we have a question. We'll have an update already here from Roel. He's at Microsoft. So his update is that the webhooks delivered by us is a complete different webhook from the one that's available from the community. So
yeah, wonderful. Thank you for that, Royal. So yeah, just to clarify that, so Royal is talking about the Azure Monitor webhook. Where is that? Yeah. So yes, earlier this year, Christian came out with a customized. Christian and a couple of fast track engineers worked together and came out with a community version of this workbook that gives more information about how your Windows Virtual Desktop is working, or it basically exposes all the inside workings of your Windows Virtual Desktop environment. But now Microsoft product group have come out with, you can say, like an inbuilt feature of Windows Virtual Desktop, which is now made, which again uses the same Azure monitor and exposes all the information about it. And if you also look at the way the visualizations are with respect to the community edition and the PG edition, I would say the PG edition definitely has it much more refined, much more, I would say, much more easy to understand. Right. And Roel, yeah, if you can elaborate more on it and help us understand the difference, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself if you're in a position to do that. Would be nice if you could elaborate, but otherwise we might carry on. So yeah, Maxim is asking as well if that webhook is supposed to be Azure Portal integrated.
Sorry, I was finding the unmute button. Yeah, Roshan, you're 100% right. So it will be a workbook, so very similar as what the community has released, published by Christian. The workbook that will be delivered from the product group you will be able to find that in the new Insights Hub. So that will come very soon. But it is it will, the look and feel will be identical. But it is a completely different developed workbook from the ground up by the product group.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Excellent. Thank you, Rael. Thank you for updating us on this as well. No, that's great. So, and I suppose anyone else had any, I'll put it in the chat as well. So were there any additional Ignite news or like new features that you really liked and found useful, guys?
Yeah, one other update, and this was something that some of my customer asked, was the service metadata. So from Ignite, I understood that the WVD service metadata location outside US will be first deployed to Europe, and I think in the coming months or closer to the end of the year, they would have it on many other locations. So that's a quick update. So if your customers are based in Europe or in those regions, they'll soon have a service endpoint or a service metadata location in the UK's European data centers. And hopefully, I'm hoping in the next 6 to 8 months, we'll have something for Australia as well.
Yeah, Philip is asking a question here. So should we encourage customers to actually move to a new webhook if they already have a community one in place?
That's probably a question to Rael for looking for unmute button. I understand it's going to be nicely packaged, kind of easier to deploy rather than configuring manually quite a few performance indicators and feed in parameters. That's my understanding. It would be much easier to get going. But if I already have that monitoring in place, should I move?
Well, there's not really anything you need to do to move because they can live side by side. So you can just change where you are looking at, and at some point you choose what you want to look at.
Got it. Just publish the updated one and say, look, this should be your preferred, or you know, make your choice really.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. Great.
Excellent. Well, we if there are any more questions, you could still put them in here, and we probably will cover them in the next part, perhaps in Ask Me Anything part as well. So feel free to put your questions at any point in time in the chat. So now we'll move to second part of the main presentation, actually handled by Christoph. And I'll just see if I can. Okay, here we go. So Christoph, it's over to you now. The permissions, and hopefully you have the rights there now to share the screen.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Lovely. Let me share my screen here. I'm not exactly what you would call a GoToMeeting veteran, so if I'm clicking the wrong button, let me know. But you should be seeing a PowerPoint slide here in full screen. Let me know if that's the case, please.
Yes, perfect. Now it's full screen. It's perfect.
Okay,
now.
wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, as Zane already introduced me a little bit, I don't have to say much about myself here. Name is Christoph Hammer. I'm the Senior Vice President for Cloud Services at ThinPrint, and in that role, I'm responsible for our cloud printing service called ezeep. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Windows Virtual Desktops and printing, what the challenges are, how it works, and how we deal with these challenges with our cloud service, ezeep. If you've got any questions, feel free to interrupt. I try to look at the chat window, but Zane, maybe if you find a question that is worth interrupting for, just let me know. It's not a huge crowd here, so I think we don't have to make it too rigid. there. Otherwise, we will also have time afterwards to ask questions and answer these, of course. ThinPrint is a company that originally founded in Germany, has a global presence. For the last 20 years, we developed software for print management. We have products in our portfolio to cover printing for desktops, mobile devices, print servers, remote and virtual desktops. And what I'd like to point out is that we actually have actual people, human beings that support these solutions all over the globe. You see a few yellow dots here on that map. So we're really focused on being close to where our markets are. And one of our latest product line really is a product that deals with printing in Windows Virtual Desktop. But to kind of motivate this presentation, to get us in the right mindset, I would like to play a little mind game, I guess you could call it, to set the scene. Imagine that each one of us is the administrator of an organization. And as part of that role, we have to support the devices of that organization. And just to get us started here, our goal is, our quality target is we need to support 75%. So 75% of the devices that we have, we need to support. So let's start with, what do we need to support if I want to support 75% of the vendors that are present on the desks of our users? So I took the category printers, of course, because that's what this presentation is about. But then I added smartphones and tablets and personal computers, which includes the Macs here, just to be clear on that, just as two other categories, right? So how many smartphones or tablets do I have to support 75% of the vendors? And the answer is only two, right? Today, if I support Apple and Samsung, then I support 81% of the smartphones and 87% of the tablets that are available worldwide. So great, we only need two of them, makes life easy. If I want to support 75% of the printer vendors, interestingly, I only have to support three vendors. So on a global scale, it's HP with 42%, Canon Group with 19%, and Epson with 18%. Now, you're probably aware of there are regional differences. Some of them have a bigger market share in Japan, and they have less of a market share in Australia, for example. But overall, three vendors cover 79% of the market. These numbers are based on 2019 sales numbers. So this year might be a little bit different, but I don't expect a huge shift in which vendors are sharing the markets here. When it comes to personal computers, we don't really have a dominant player, or not as many dominant players. The share is pretty equal, actually, and that's based on sales numbers in 2018, so we're lacking a year there. Lenovo with 23%, HP with 22%, Dell with 16%, Apple with 7%, and Azure Group with 6%. And you can probably imagine by these names, it's laptops and PCs together. So basically everything they're able to put on their on the desktop, on the desk of users. So all of these together gives us 74 point and a little, so very close to 75% with 5 manufacturers. Let's take this now a step further, right? Supporting the vendors only makes sense if I'm the alliance business partner manager for these vendors, but I'm the IT admin here. I need to support the devices of these vendors. So goal again is I want to support 75% of the devices. How many devices do I have to support? This is now based on numbers in November 2019. So again, might have changed a little bit, but not drastically. If I need to support 75% of the smartphones and tablets that are available from these two vendors that we just talked about, we have to support 31 different smartphones and tablets just from Samsung and Apple. We have to support 50 personal computers. Now this number, you can double this number if you like. I basically took 10 devices for each of the vendors. Challenge, as you know, with computers is they're so modular, right? You add 4 gigs and 8 gigs out of 4 gigs. Is it now a new device? It's not a new device. So I basically took 10 devices from each of these vendors. If you feel like doubling it, go for it. Doesn't change the point I'm making here. Because as you can see, when it comes to printers, and these are the printers in November 2019 that were sold in the United States by those three major print vendors, HP, Canon, and Epson together were selling 387 printers. That's a staggering amount of distinct devices that were sold by each of these vendors. And I think you're starting to get the idea why printing is such a pain in the neck, right? Now, we take it one step further, because the reason why we don't care that much about the number of smartphones or personal computers or printers is that we all know in the end it's the software that makes them run. So for my final numbers here, let's now imagine we want to support 100% of the software that runs these devices. That means we have to support about 17 Android versions, 11 iOS versions, so 28 together, roughly over the last 20 years. Of course, in reality, we don't support 20 years back, but then there might have been some BlackBerry, some Palm, OS in the mix. So let's just say 28 or 30 if you like. When it comes to personal computers, dominating is definitely the 17 Mac versions, 20 Windows versions over 20 years. Again, we might not have 20 years back that we still support, probably not 10 years back is my guess here, but there might be some Linux in the mix and some Linux versions. So 37, just counting the Mac and Windows versions. And then when it comes to printers, when it comes to printer drivers, and these are the illustration of printer drivers that are available with the Windows Update service at the moment. There are over 14,000 printer drivers that you could download at any point right now from Microsoft to make your printers work. And I think that's where the real problem starts with. Just the sheer amount of devices, the sheer amount of software, of drivers that are needed to make these printers work. We have roughly 650 million printers worldwide in use. This number is growing slightly, but the growth curve definitely slowed down. So in the 90s and early 2000s, it was definitely a sharper growth curve. There are over 50 vendors, even though that we only have 3 that dominate the market. There are still 47 other print vendors that are either reselling and rebranding basically the same hardware, or that are basically creating their own hardware. I'm not including 3D printing here, but I did include label printers, for example, and other specialty printers. So there's a lot of vendors that provide a lot of printers. In 2018 alone, 90 million new printers were sold. And as you just saw with the last slide, printer drivers, there's just a sheer amount of drivers that are still being created, even with the move to universal drivers. You still have to pick between 3 to 5 drivers for a new printer. And when you use universal drivers, you then have to configure these universal drivers for the exact model and the features of that model. With Windows Virtual Desktop, these problems don't go away. I mean, why would they, right? The Windows Virtual Desktop is not designed to resolve printing problems, but it does a good job in not making printing problems worse. And we get to that here in a second. With Windows Virtual Desktop, you still have to deal with printer drivers. Because you still have that endpoint, right? You still have that PC, that Mac, that iOS device, the tablet, for example, or the Linux device, where you need to configure the driver, where you need to configure the connection to the printer. You still have to consider the network design. Where is my user in relationship to the printer? How does the user's device actually get to the printer? You still have to design for access control. Who is even allowed to get to these printers? What features of the printer are allowed to be used? Can everybody print in color, or does everybody have to print in duplex? And then the last point here is probably more for larger organizations or for organizations that serve the public, like universities or other public places. Who is paying for this? Who is causing the costs, and who is going to pay for that? So those are all points that make printing challenging, and they don't just disappear because Windows Virtual Desktop happened. But let me show you what Windows Virtual Desktop does in regard to printing. So I have a little live demo prepared here. So it's not a video, which means we can be flexible, but it also means it can go horribly wrong. So you should see my desktop here. Let me explain what I have here. So I got a virtual machine here. That's this one that I'm just changing the size. In that virtual machine, so virtual machine is my pretend desktop as the user. In that virtual machine, I got a remote desktop web client open for the Windows Virtual Desktop session. Just resize it as well, okay. And on this Windows Virtual Desktop, I have enabled to redirect my printers from my desktop. So my user desktop has a couple of printers here. I allow printing to them by using the built-in redirection. And it's a really simple way to do that, right? They just it's a universal driver. It's based on a PDF driver. When I want to print, I'm just opening a document here that I had prepared for this demo, and I go to print. The user doesn't really get to choose much, right? It's just there's one printer. It points to the session of that user, so the user only sees one. And when it comes to properties, I would be surprised if a user gets confused how to configure this, because in the end, there are only two settings: paper format and how many copies. And the reason for that is that the idea here is simply this one driver creates a PDF print job. You see that here on the top. When this is done, that PDF is just downloaded. I mean, we are in the end in a web browser here, in a web client. So let's see when the download is done. Yep, there's our download. And now when the user clicks on that download, then on the local machine, so I can minimize my virtual desktop here, the default PDF viewer opens up. In this case, it seems to be Edge. And the default PDF viewer now presents the document. The user can go to print again, and then select from all the printers that are locally installed, right? So it's a process that works, but it's also a process that requires quite a bit of clicking. If my users print their documents like 5 times a week or 3 times a week a few times, which is not uncommon in many businesses these days, it's probably not a big deal. However, if you're talking about automated print flows, we had one customer a couple of weeks ago who actually needed to print invoicing, and their invoicing app or invoices, and the invoicing app didn't create one print job with 100 invoices. The invoicing app created 100 print jobs with just one invoice each. You can imagine if you have to do that 100 times, you might get very annoyed. So this is what's basically built in. It's a manual process where you can use a general PDF driver and then actually pick the local driver to print. Now, how the printers get on the local machine is still something that needs to be addressed. And there are a few other items here that still need to be figured out, or that just don't go away. In fact, there are a few additional challenges now, because whenever you add a new layer of desktop, you have to involve that layer in your planning, right? So the topic of printer assignment doesn't make it any easier by adding another layer. Yes, you can say that Windows Virtual Desktop just has this universal driver, this one printer queue, but you still have to figure out how then your printers actually should get on these desktops. You have to figure out which driver is available for which user, for which desktop. Again, if you just have Windows or just Windows and Mac, it might make it easier. But if you have a variety of options there, it can take quite some time. And you have to consider now the capabilities of the clients and the protocols in connection with Windows Virtual Desktop. So one example, I showed you the Windows Virtual Desktop web client, which uses that PDF-based universal driver concept. If I would have shown you the same desktop, user desktop, connecting to the same virtual desktop with the RDP client, then all of a sudden I would have mapped all my printers into the session and not just one universal printer, just one universal printer queue. So you have to consider, what can my client do? Because the RDP client for Mac, for example, has different printer support than the RDP client for Windows. And both of them have different feature support than the one for the web client for Windows Virtual Desktop. So you have to consider these variations when it comes to printing now, and how you design your access to your Windows Virtual Desktops has an impact on how printing for these users can actually get done. Now, independently from that, you also now deal with global data transfers. Now, when I say global, that would be a worst case. In most cases, I would assume that the data center hosting your Windows virtual desktops is relatively close to where you are, but there might still be an ocean in between. There might still be half a continent in between. So print job size is definitely something you have to consider now. We had a request for a project from Singapore, where they basically, during a trial period, figured out that they are sending 3 terabyte in print data. Now, everything leaving the Azure cloud costs money, so 3 terabyte might add up to something, they figured, and they wanted to find out if they can reduce that maybe a little bit. Bandwidth is definitely a challenge, right? And in most developed areas, you have plenty of bandwidth, you feel like, and it's not a huge concern. But when a print job, a single print job can be 100 megabyte to maybe a gigabyte, imagine your employees streaming Netflix videos in high definition all day long. How many of those high definition Netflix video shows can you actually support at the same time? Printing is similar to that. With more printing, obviously, bandwidth is more scarce than with little printing. Latency is something that becomes more important as well when you deal with printing in various data centers. The SMB protocol that's used for printer shares when you use print servers in a data center, and that would be one option, right? You set up a VPN between your physical locations and your Azure data center, and then use a print server there to then have Windows Virtual Desktop just pick up these print server shares. But we noticed that when the print server is in a different data center than the Windows Virtual Desktops, latency becomes a huge problem because the SMB protocol is a very chatty protocol, and it makes it very sluggish then to open printer properties or to send print jobs over that shared printer. So definitely something to keep in mind when you want to use print servers with Windows Virtual Desktops. Not as many printers in the commercial environment, but still a lot of printers on the private market, personal market, are using bidirectional communication, and that definitely is a big challenge. If the printer is in your Windows Virtual Desktop and wants to communicate directly with the physical printer in your location, bidirectional communication just doesn't work. It's just too far away. There's just too much delay there. And it's something to figure out. Again, more for home users, more for the Canon bubble jets and the inkjet printers, the small ones. Luckily, this is not a trend that is increasing, but something to consider, especially with all the people working from home or using their personal devices now to get their job done and get printing done. Print protocols is something to consider. There's not as much variety, luckily, as there could be. We basically have the TCP/IP printing with the variants of LPD printing, and then we have IPP printing. Those are the 3 protocols that are relevant when it comes to printing over a network. USB redirection is theoretically available, but I don't think anybody wants to use that for actual printing, and printer creation. And then the accessibility, right? Does my printer, does my device that I have right now as a user, is that able to access the printer? How do we do that? So none of these challenges are caused by Windows Virtual Desktop. We had the same challenges with any kind of remote desktops already. But Windows Virtual Desktop as a hosted platform is in general making the life easier of providing these desktops. So now printing would have to be figured out on top of that to make it really smooth. When I talk about printing and how customers, how users are supposed to think about printing or should be thinking about printing, I like this slide, and I like starting with how do people actually work these days? Because we know there was this big trend on consumerization. We don't talk about that as much anymore. But in fact, this year we've seen a lot of consumerization due to the fact that a lot of people are working from home. A lot of people are working remotely. They're using their own devices. So basically, I separate this in 3 slides, in 3 categories here when we talk about working. We have the bottom one here, the interact layer. This is where the user gets a device to interact with, where they can push a mouse button or a keyboard, or they have a touch screen to interact. And then we got the compute and store and secure layer that is these days in the cloud, either a public cloud or a private cloud, either the cloud in the data center of the company or a cloud hosted by Azure. or other vendors for that matter. And these two pieces are connected with the internet, obviously. So the interact layer where the user interacts, the internet layer where the communication, the interaction is transferred to the compute store and secure layer, and then of course the responses back to the interact layer. So this is how people work today. This is how most companies that have that ability in regard to their business needs, their security needs, how they would structure the work environment to separate compute store secure from interact. Now, when it comes to printing here, and we want to figure out how do we best support printing, people intuitively want to have the interact layer now interact with the printers. And when you want to do that, you come up with a table here on the right side, something like that, where you say, okay, my interact layer, my devices here can be Android, can be Chrome, can be iOS, can be macOS, can be Windows, can be Linux. The printer now can be either directly attached to these devices, or it can be in the vicinity of that device, and it can be USB printer, it can be network printer. And I just wrote this down. I mean, this by far not all combinations that you have. But the main point is if you see it that way, that my devices should interact with my printers, then you end up with a lot of complexity, and it will be very challenging to find a system that really supports all devices that your users might be using with all printers. I prefer seeing it this way. The printer is another device where the user interacts with. So we put it in the interact layer, and that means the PC or the Mac is not talking to the printer when you see it that way, but the printer is also talking to the compute store cloud environment using the internet. It's just another device in the interact layer. And that simplifies the architecture quite a bit, because now we have one side where the interact layer, the devices, the PCs, the Macs, the iOS devices, whatever you have, that sends the document or the print job to the cloud. And on the other side, you got your interact layer with the actual print device that receives the print job. Now, when I say device here, in this example, Windows Virtual Desktop, hosted desktops, would also be a device to interact with, or a desktop to interact with. Okay, and this is basically how the ezeep architecture is. We keep the endpoints very simple. We put all the magic into the cloud. And by doing it this way, your device, your desktop, doesn't really have to communicate with the printer directly. It doesn't have to have the right drivers installed. It doesn't have to have the connectivity directly to the printer. It doesn't even need to know about the details of that printer. All of that is done in that cloud and that central point that connects these two pieces. So for Windows Virtual Desktop, and this is a designer graphic that we developed together with Microsoft about a year ago. Yes, it's been about a year ago, where we basically illustrate where does Windows Virtual Desktop sit in these components, and how does the ezeep infrastructure relate to these components. So you see here on the left side, the remote desktop clients. Then we got the Azure Managed Services to basically provide access, make it easy. And then we have the actual device, the environment that is then managed by the organization that is then provided automatically, provisioned automatically. And ezeep as a cloud printing service sits in this layer on this category of managed services so that you don't have to deal with it. We have the various components there that are used then to connect the actual desktop with the actual printers. So this graphic is great for geeks. I'm a bigger fan of this one here because it just simplifies it a lot easier. Windows Virtual Desktop is one of the endpoints that provide print jobs to the ezeep cloud. And all we need for that is an ezeep print app. So when we're talking about the ideal print architecture in a Windows Virtual Desktop environment, and that is with ezeep, without ezeep, just what do I need to consider to create the ideal print environment? I basically recommend these 5 points. The first one is, yes, you might be in charge of printing of the Windows Virtual Desktop environment, and printing might be the challenge at hand right now, but look for a solution that addresses the challenges of local printing as well. Because the Windows Virtual Desktop printing will just be an extension of the local printing. So if you got a problem with your local printing, with local printer assignment, local drivers, Windows Virtual Desktop will basically have the same problems. Design your printing for locations and not just for devices. If you have an environment where you can say, most organizations have branch offices, or most organizations are structured with physical locations, design printing for these locations or based on these locations, because then you could automatically support every device that a user might have for these locations. If you design for devices and the next new great device comes out that everybody wants to have, all your design for printing was pointless, because now you got to redesign it for this new device. If you design for locations, as long as the locations remain, your print design can remain as well. And another benefit of designing for locations, in most cases, you design it for one location and then you replicate it for your other locations. And that even applies to possibly printing at home, right? Where you have one solution how users can print from home, not considering their devices, and then replicate that solution. Personally, I would design independently from RDP print every direction. Just not a big fan of it. I know there are great scenarios where this is a great solution and they're absolutely valid to use it in that. But as a general design, many companies use it as a shortcut so that they don't really have to deal with printing on the remote desktop, on the Windows Virtual Desktop. So sometimes yes, sometimes no. But I would definitely want to avoid VPNs when it comes to printing. And that comes back to that slide with the how people actually work these days. We see that a lot of companies change from very large workforces in one place to smaller workforces, smaller groups. Instead of renting and leasing and using buildings for 10 years, they might only use shared workspaces for 1 year. They might have a working group in one city, and then like 18 months later, they're building a new working group in another city. VPNs just don't provide that flexibility. Hardware-based VPNs don't provide that flexibility. And if your printing is designed to only work with VPNs, then you probably will have to redesign that constantly whenever the business need changes, whenever the architecture changes, how people actually work together. And again, working from home is the extreme there, where you have one person in one location, where hardware VPNs in most cases are just not practical. Find a solution that supports existing printers, and that, I mean, it's very obvious, but I pointed out because you might see solutions that only support HP printers or only support Xerox printers, or you have solutions that only support Xerox printers after a certain model range. It doesn't help in most situations unless you are fully leased, or your printers are leased printers and get replaced every 3 to 5 years due to your managed service contract. You will have these old printers sitting around. And with printing there's no bad printing, right? Either the printer prints or the printer does not print. So if you have a solution that only works with some printers but not with others, you probably have very unhappy customers. So at the very least, you need a solution that has a fallback to support these existing printers. And then I think the last part here, and I should have started with that, is users don't like change. And especially when it comes to something as trivial as printing. Find a solution, find a design that simply works the same way as users would normally work. So coming back to my example here with the Windows Virtual Desktop printing via the HTML-based client, you would have to retrain your users if you want to use it that way. And that works for quite a number of users and workgroups, fine. But when you have users that don't want to deal with it, that are not technical, that have no reason to deal with this, having to explain to them to click 3 or 4 times is just a big, big challenge. So let me show you here just how easy it works in my second live demo. And I will also use the same environment that I just showed you. So we have our virtual desktop here. Let me log back in. Yep. So what I'm going to do is I log out, and then I'm going to log back in to show you how these printers are then being presented and how printing with Windows Virtual Desktop works when ezeep is involved. There we go.
We do have a few questions coming up, Christoph, as well. So yeah, we can address them afterwards, or whichever way you want it.
All right, then yeah, let's finish this demo, and then I just have a summary slide, and we can jump right into questions at that point.
Okay, sure.
And I'm not sure how I'm doing with time. I'm not planning spending more than 5 minutes on this part here.
Yeah, 5 minutes is yeah, you've got 5 minutes for
Okay,
sure.
great. Just have to find my passwords, and I have to do it in a way that you don't see it. So here we go. So logging back in here. Oops. There's my password. Okay, while this is connecting, I'm minimizing, or I'm making my user desktop, my user virtual desktop a little bit smaller. And I'm also having a print server desktop here, just in the background. I use that here in a second. So we're connecting back to the Windows Virtual Desktop. This time ezeep print app is running and enabled. So when the user logs in, this app basically creates printers in the background. Let's see, as soon as the process starts, although I'm not quite sure if I logged off. Yep, there we go. So instead of just having this one universal printer, we are creating all of these individual printers based on a rule set that the administrator set up via a web portal. And that's why I have the print server open here. I have it in this demo configured that we're not printing to the local desktop first and then have to figure out how the local desktop gets to the printer. So that problem with the, if I design for desktops or if I design for the end device, I have to basically figure out for each device individually. I have a configure to print to a print server. Now this could also be an appliance. So we also have a print appliance, a small form factor, about 3 centimeters by 8 centimeters, which you can just ship out to those smaller branches. And then you wouldn't need print servers anymore. If I now want to print, same document here, I can simply pick any of the printers my admin assigned to me. So let's use this one, for example. And the user can basically make the settings they are used to, accustomed to. So they get paper formats, they get a couple finishing options, all these things. But the most important part is the printing process is exactly the same. They just hit print. And as soon as the application is done preparing the print data, in this case, the XPS data or EMF data, the application becomes available again to the user, and they can just continue working with that. So they're done, they can continue. They don't have to watch any other buttons here. You see the job is in the queue, and you see the job is being streamed already here to the other queue, and it's being rendered there. Actually, it's already there, so it was pretty fast. This is how we deal with that, right? We have a print app here on the desktop side, and right now it's an app for Windows, but we're also releasing the apps for Chrome OS, for iOS, for Android, for Mac here in the near future. And on the other side, we just have an ezeep connector running either on Windows or running on Mac, or running it as part of this appliance hardware so that you can get rid of your print servers. And both of these pieces connect to the ezeep cloud, and that makes it so universally useful, because then you don't have to deal with the end devices printers or queues or drivers, or their connectivity to the printers don't matter anymore. So let me shorten this up a little bit and basically wrap this up. So this is an example of that print appliance, a very small form factor set, about 3 centimeters by maybe 8 centimeters, has the ezeep connector built in. It detects all the printers in your network, reports it back to the ezeep cloud, and then all you have to do as the admin is assign it to the right printers. We also have APIs, so if you need to automate certain tasks, we have a print API, so you can include printing directly into your backend, into your ERP system, into your web portal where you want to allow printing from. And we're working on a connector API and management API, so they're not public yet. And then we use it as a platform for future development, so a print app for Office 365, for example, mobile printing, iOS, Android, I just mentioned that. But we also want to include activity reporting, release printing, secure follow-me printing, and then the ability to restrict certain users from doing certain things, so print policies. So that's what we will build on top of that. And we already talked about this, so I just cut this short. Design for location of devices. Reduce your drivers, but don't feel obligated to bring them down to 0 or to 1. If there is a good need for a driver, add it. Windows has gotten so much better with handling drivers. They can handle a couple of drivers. Just don't do it dozens or hundreds. That probably will be a problem. Don't design for VPNs. Just you will limit yourself in regard to flexibility that businesses need these days. Avoid a block processing where one step of the printing process has to be done for the next one to start. It just slows down printing overall, especially when you talk about low bandwidth, long latency designs. And don't pick solutions or don't design your solution to be an island. When it comes to clouds and to cloud operations, the interoperability is extremely important. One system has to be able to exchange information with another system. Otherwise, you just build one cloud next to the other cloud, next to the next cloud, and a big portion of benefits that cloud can provide will just go away. So that was my quick wrap up here. I really appreciate your attention. And yeah, let's jump into questions.
Yes, thank you, Christoph. That was a very nice presentation there. So we do have a few questions. So first one is from Andrew, and Andrew is asking, can ThinPrint still utilize the features of the print copy device, such as department codes or authorization codes, etc.? That is in the context that the end device doesn't necessarily have the drivers installed.
So talking about the Windows Virtual Desktop context, and I'm jumping back here to my virtual desktop. Our solution uses a universal driver, the TP output gateway. So if you know ThinPrint, then it's the same technology there. However, if the printer driver of that print device is installed, then we automatically detect it and use that one instead. So it's a very simple way to provide universal printing with a basic interface to, let's say, 90% of your printers. And then you will get these options here, stapling, punching, binding. This printer doesn't support that, as well as these features here, all the paper formats, resolution, paper sources like trace. You get those automatically, but if that's not enough and you need a pin code, department code, for example, or a watermark, it's another example, then you can simply install that printer driver for that class of printers directly on your Windows Virtual Desktops, and ezeep will automatically pick that driver then instead, and then obviously you will have a full driver functionality. You also have the full driver GUI, which might be a little bit more confusing. Obviously there's that trade-off, simplicity and flexibility.
Great. And Andrew's follow-up question is, can device availability be done via security or distribution groups?
Could you repeat that? I didn't get that.
Sorry. Can device availability, so I assume he's referring to printer, probably printer provisioning, printer mapping, be done via security or distribution groups?
Okay. Yes. I think I just show you how we do that. It is by security group. So if I think this is the app portal. Nope, it's not. Let me just log into the app portal here. So app.ezeep.com is the admin portal. So we support multiple ways to authenticate. The Microsoft Azure AD authentication is the most convenient one, and that's the one we kind of started implementing with. And then since then we have added a few other ones. So this is our current admin console. I can just go to users and groups. I can invite my users if I want to invite people that are not in my Azure directory. But if they are in the Azure directory, then I can simply pick the group and assign the printers to that group. And these are the printers that are currently available in this environment. So if I would now pick, it doesn't really matter, I can pick any of them. Here, let me pick that one. Bad example. Let me pick this one and hit done. Now within roughly 60 seconds, all the users of that group, so in this case AADC administrators, will see that new printer showing up here. So it's between 10 and 60 seconds. So it's really dynamic here. But yeah, it is always assigned to the security group. I can do it the same this way when I go to my network printers. These are all the printers that are in the environment for my ezeep organization. And I can just pick a printer here and use the assignment tab. And then simply pick the group that should have access to this. So let's also pick this AADC admins here. So both would lead to the same results. Both ways would lead to printers would be made available to the users of that group. And as I said, it's about 60 seconds. So
Right.
not sure if you want to wait for that. I think this was one of the new ones, and the test printer should show up here anytime.
Yes. Andrew says, thank you. Awesome, and thank you for the demo.
Now, what I personally like is you can also see which printer is provided by which device, right? If you got multiple print servers or these ezeep hubs, these small appliances, it can be a challenge. So you can also just go to, here, this is my demo right now. Just show me all the printers that are on this print server. And then I can just assign them directly from here, for example. Yeah. Oh yeah, but that has nothing to do with the question. So let me go back.
Yeah, thanks for that. Next question is from Marco. And Marco is asking, a lot of WVD customers are now working from home, so from home offices. So they need to print on printers that are typically Wi-Fi connected to home LAN. And sometimes the printer is directly attached to the PC or thin client using USB cable. So yeah, so his question is, in this kind of, what would he need to install to run up a demo, like test environment?
So we basically have two options in that scenario. One of them is install the ezeep connector, and let me go back to that graphic here. That one. So we do have an ezeep connector that is designed for the individual PCs or individual Macs of the user. So they just install the ezeep connector. There is no configuration in the admin portal needed besides allowing that user to print to their own local printers. And then we create these printers on whatever device this print app runs on. So in this case, the Windows Virtual Desktop. So that's one way. Works great with if you got, let's say, a USB printer, or if you don't require a VPN that doesn't allow split tunnel, for example. If you are in a more secured environment, maybe a company laptop that you provide for your users and is kind of restricted and locked down, then these ezeep hubs become very nice tools in that scenario, because they are not tied to the VPN of your PC or of your Mac at home. These are small network devices sitting next to it. So you can lock down the PC, the print job will go to the ezeep hub, and then from the ezeep hub to the actual printer. And that could be a Wi-Fi connection or an Ethernet connection, or a USB printer for that matter, when you attach it to the ezeep hub. So you get both options, either the ezeep hub or the ezeep connector for PCs or Macs.
Great. Okay, so I hope that clarifies your question, Marco. So yeah, thank you, Christoph, for covering this question as well. And I suppose now we'll move to, well, thank you. I think we'll wrap up this part, then the presentation, and we'll move to Ask Me Anything part now. And I believe we still have a few questions, but we will ask them in that Ask Me Anything part anyway. So let me just share, I'll see if Philip is here. Philip, are you around?
Yes, I'm here, Zane. Yeah, always, sure. Yeah, and thanks for the quality presentation, and was quite exciting to learn more about what ezeep can do and what are the scenarios where it can be applied. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. So guys, we will do something new today, I suppose. We'll open, I mean, we can open our cameras and our perhaps voice early today for this part, and we'll start maybe, if you would like to enable your cameras, if you're happy to do that, you can do that. And then I'll yes, I'll hand it over to Philip. Philip, did you have anything to present today, or we're just simply asking questions?
Yeah, look, I guess I'm just a facilitator and it's an open floor. And, if we have questions amongst the group, I'll try to answer myself, or, everyone else can contribute. And look, it's great to see, our active sort of members like Maxim, helping with those options to publish workbooks and work with them, or Roshan answering questions related to news and not related. And I think it's great that we kind of enhancing each other and sharing the experiences that we have. So please go ahead. Any questions related to WVD or not directly related? I can also talk about mountain bikes, and I'm not going to, if you'll answer me or ask me any questions around that.
I actually had a first follow-up question to Christoph again. It was from Dwayne Carter in our chat here. And so Dwayne is asking, is there a multi-tenant web admin console available for ezeep to manage, like to look after multiple ezeep customers from one dashboard? So this is obviously for service providers like multi-tenancy.
At the moment, it's not. No, you got one dashboard for each tenant, so to say. We are looking into a fast switch between tenants, so that you really just have to basically click on a button, see all the list of your tenants to switch between them, which I think would cover most of the provider scenarios. But when you talk about very large providers, we won't be able we won't be able to reach that kind of automatism that they would require without that management API. So I believe at that point, you probably want to integrate the user management API and then just automate a lot of these steps, because in the end, nobody likes GUIs if they have to do it 100 times a day.
That's true. Thank you, Christoph. So, all right, we've got and
come on, Roshan. We need answers from you, not questions from you. Is Windows Hello supported with WVD? I don't have an answer. I haven't tried implementing Windows Hello with WVD, so good question.
This is a request from one of the customer. Any passwordless, like Windows Hello or even Fido keys or the passwordless authentication. This is something I'm trying.
The pins do work. I did try with pin. That definitely works. I know that beta ADFS support is now available, so you can actually get more or less closer to SSO. But I haven't tried with Windows Hello. Sorry, that's something we have to check and research. But you're not allowed to ask questions, Roshan. You can only provide answers.
Maybe I have the answer. I'm Marco. Hi. The answer is that Windows Hello is for business is supported if you are using the certificate-based architecture. So in Windows Hello for business, you have two architectures. The first one is using asymmetric keys created by the TPM SIP, and this is not supported if you are using a certificate that is created by a PKI is supported. I don't have experience, direct experience about that, but I know that it's supported.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll look into that.
thank you.
I can answer that question as well. So Windows Hello for Business, is it supported? That is a very loaded question because it can be used in multiple scenarios. It can be used. So first of all, WVD today is AD joined, and therefore we are restricted by what can be done in AD joined environments. So if the question from the customer is, does Windows Hello for Business support Azure AD joined devices managed by Intune using Windows Hello for Business? So there are always a lot of additional questions that need to be asked before we understand what the exact scenario is when they ask these type of questions. Same as customers asking, is Intune supported or is Azure AD Join supported? Because it's always an entire scenario that they are asking this for. So that is a longer term plan that is all on the roadmap. So Windows Hello for Business, I think I have a link here on what from an authentication perspective. Oh, 1 second. We have it documented, but anything that works today in an AD joined environment will work, but you need a direct line of sight to an AD domain controller, meaning that if you are working from home and you are setting up a connection to a WVD environment, you might not have a direct line of sight to a DC. If you are doing it over a VPN connection, or if you are doing it over an express route, where you do have a direct line of sight, then this will work. So let me get the link. Then you have the. Does that make sense? So it's not a very easy to answer question without understanding the complete scenario.
Okay, so if we take a simple setup where the customer has an Active Directory on-prem syncing to Azure AD, and also he has set up an Active Directory running on a virtual machine in Azure, which is acting as an additional domain controller. And with this additional domain controller, he has all the WVD authentication being done, right? In this setup, the customer is interested in passwordless authentication. And one of his first option was Windows Hello. So that's the scenario.
Yeah. So have a look at this link, and it describes all the authentication mechanisms that we support.
Okay.
And it will describe why we need a direct line of sight to a domain controller, and it's basically because we need Kerberos. Because we are AD joined, even in a hybrid scenario. As you know, in a hybrid scenario, although some people believe that we are Azure AD joined, it's not. It's only Azure AD registered, and that's the big difference between hybrid and Azure AD joined.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Raul. Thank you for providing the update and the link as well on this Microsoft development here.
I have a question regarding the ezeep solution. I know that is supported by the Agile OS, so the Agile Team clients. Do we have some limitations, some differences in using ezeep with Agile OS, or is we have the same capabilities?
Christoph, it might be a question for you.
Yeah, do you mind repeating that one?
I'm just asking if we have differences in terms of capabilities if we are using the ezeep solution with the Agile OS, Agile Team clients.
Generally speaking, no. So the Agile thin client or Agile endpoint at the moment would be treated like a device that is not involved in the printing process. So we would set up the printing through either print server or the ezeep hub. However, we are in a development stage with Agile to integrate printing directly on their devices, but that's not released yet. So it wouldn't be available until Agile releases their connecting part. At that point, we would be able to send print jobs directly to the Agile device and then have the ezeep connector running directly on the Agile device or that Agile OS, I think they call that, those lockdown PCs basically. But at the moment, we can use them just by supplying by utilizing the ezeep hubs or utilizing a print server with the connector. So yeah, in regards to features, that would be exactly the same, but we're hoping that the built-in ezeep connector on Agile will become available here soon.
Okay, thank you.
Great, good question. Thank you for that, Marco. All right, and so did anyone else have any, I suppose, features or news that you liked from the Ignite that you found really useful and you would like to perhaps share with our members? Any?
There is a lot to like, Zane. It's just we're also interested in timelines for some of those, particularly interest towards Msix Attach, App Attach going GA. I don't know if Royal, you can share any information, any insights in that area. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, we I can't be as specific as you want me to be, but I can say that anything that I can share so is also in the M365 roadmap.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the M365 roadmap?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what and Msix App Attach is in there as well.
Understand.
I'm looking in there right now just to make sure that I believe there is a short link to the WVD M365 roadmap, but I'll add the link in the window in a second.
Yeah, thanks for that. And if there's no questions, can I also ask a question to the audience and pretty much ask, if you had experience and what was your experience like and what was your success like with using GPU-enabled instances for the client in a multi-session environment. So we do have single session experience already, and that was pretty straightforward. But have you used multi-session GPU-enabled instances as your session hosts? And what was your experience like?
Yeah, I used, what was it? Yeah, it was the GPU series. It was the NV6 series for multi-session. The performance actually wasn't all that great. When we started adding additional users to it, it was running CAD programs like Revit and AutoCAD and Autodesk. Yeah, so unfortunately COVID happened and that project was put on hold. But at that stage, yeah, it was quite some time ago. So it was in March. It's possibly better now with the ARM version as well.
Yeah, and we got new NV instances in V4 based on AMD CPUs and GPUs as well with GPU partitioning. So that's probably something I will share with the group once I have a bit more detail, because we have an upcoming project with exactly that requirement, and there will be some testing, which is exciting. So once I have more data, I'll be happy to share as well. Hopefully, it would be helpful for the community.
Yeah, one of the things, just something to mention at that point, Autodesk and AutoCAD weren't coming to the party in terms of they were saying that it was an unsupported platform to run the CAD programs. So I'm not sure if anything is developed on that side.
Yes, it did develop. They did certify Azure and the instances officially. So
cool, great.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, guys. And so feel free to enable your cameras if you want to. We'll this is a event group photo opportunity. We can take it now in a few moments. But while you're doing that and finding the maybe camera button, so next November group, we've got a prime main talk is arranged with our security specialist on WVD from Sweden, and it's a Simon Bunter. So that will be quite interesting talk titled "Securing Your WVD Inside and Out." So I look forward to this session. So hopefully we'll see you there at this session as well in November. The dates and times are on a meetup group. So, all right, time, guys, for our quick event group photo. So, if everyone can say perhaps WVD, and we'll take a picture. WVD. All righty. So there you go. Happy faces here. So yeah, that's our meetup for October.